Greetings, class. I wanted to take just a few minutes of your time to provide you with today an overview of rubrics. There are a couple of resources in Module 2, including an article that I would like you to take a look at. There is also an assignment toward the end of the term where you will be asked to develop a rubric. So attention to the resources in the module are important. I know that most of you are likely familiar with rubrics, but you may not be familiar with the development of a rubric. A rubric is quite simply a scoring guide, or it might be referred to as a scoring tool that explicitly describes the instructor's performance expectations for an assignment. There are several benefits of a well-developed rubric. I want to emphasize well-developed rubric because if in fact the rubric is not well-developed, then those benefits are non-existent. A well-developed rubric really does reduce the amount of time spent grading by instructors because when you can refer to a substantive description without writing out long comments, then it reduces the amount of time spent grading. But I think perhaps the greatest strength or the greatest benefit of a well-developed rubric is that it helps ensure consistency across time and across graders. So indeed, it helps ensure inter-rater reliability. It really does help to discourage complaints about grades. We know that an effective rubric also offers several important student benefits. So rubrics can help students use instructor feedback to improve their performance, and rubrics can help students to understand student expectations. The rubric for any type of assignment, whether or not it be a paper or a project or an oral presentation, should indeed be given to the student in advance of the assignment so that students are aware of the way in which the paper, the project, the presentation will be judged. It is often the case, I have found, that when a student does poorly on an assignment, it's because they have not looked at the rubric. So I always spend a good deal of time reminding students about assignments and encouraging them to review the rubric. We should be able to tell exactly what should be covered within a presentation, a project, or a paper by a review of the rubric. Now, there are different types of rubrics, including holistic rubrics and analytic rubrics. A holistic rubric provides one overall score and does not provide students with feedback on how they performed on each criterion, whereas analytic rubrics provide students with a score on each criterion, and I myself prefer analytic rubrics, especially for formative assessments, because they provide students with specific guidance and feedback related to each criterion. I do have a copy of an analytic rubric here for us on the screen. There are three criteria or aspects of performance across this analytic rubric. Now, criteria is sometimes referred to as the dimension, and I believe it is referred to as the dimension in one or two articles I have posted in the module. It is quite typical in a paper that one of the first criterion that will be looked at is the introduction. The second criterion might be research, and the third criterion conclusion. And then it wouldn't surprise me if a third criterion was writing, And indeed, we see that across this rubric that is indicated on the screen. In nursing, we also sometimes see a fourth criterion titled APA. So the dimensions or the criteria are what the paper or the project or the presentation is all about. Next, we have the descriptors. Those are the characteristics associated with each dimension. And next, the performance level or student level of mastery, which within each criterion. When we look at the dimension or the criterion, best practice is There should be a minimum of 2 dimensions or 2 criterion, and we do see that here. There should be a minimum of 3 to 5 descriptors, and again, we do see that here on this rubric. It is not uncommon to list the point range after the descriptor, and again, we do see that here as well. When, uh, when we look at descriptions, it's important to use parallel language across the scale. I want you to consider Bloom's taxonomy in writing your descriptors. It's also important to use student-friendly language that is specific. So what do I mean when I say specific? For example, let's say I had a criterion titled reference. Instead of writing uses excellent resources, well, we know that that's not specific, right? To be more specific, I might say uses 3 peer-reviewed resources. When we look here at this criterion titled writing, in this rubric, it indicates no major spelling or grammatical errors in terminology. Next, there are only a few major, and here we have this in the second column. There are only a few minor spelling or grammatical errors or terms are not clearly defined. But what exactly is a few? Is a few 3? Is a few 4? So we could perhaps be more specific here. Next, is the paper coherently organized? And is the logic easy to follow? So is the paper well organized? Is the argument easy to follow? Does it use parallel language? Those are all important things when we're looking at the criterion as well as the descriptors. I want to remind you that if we're describing something in the first column, that we want to be certain to describe it in the second column. Now, what is helpful when you're writing your descriptions, and if you have 3 columns, is to first write out the description for the high score, and then to write out the description for the low score. Okay? And then you can move to the middle. When you are writing out your descriptions, focus on what would earn someone an excellent score. Write out the description for the excellent, and then write out the description for the poor, and then move toward the middle. That can often be helpful in the development of a rubric. I want to emphasize the importance of reading those articles relative to rubrics that are in Module 2. I want you to understand the best practices of the development of rubrics and why you might choose a holistic rubric over an analytic rubric. Please do not hesitate to reach out to me if you have any questions or concerns, and please post those questions within the discussion thread for Module 2. Thank you so much.